Good morning, everybody. It's a beautiful morning. Right? It's a beautiful morning, isn't it? It's going to get even more beautifuler. And yes, that's a word. We got Manitou Makwa over here going to open us up in the most incredible way. Our favorite drum group, everybody. Right? Manitou Makwa, they've been so amazing over the last few days. It's a bittersweet day because we get to go home. That's always good. But yet all our new friends and family members here get to say see you later. No goodbyes in our language, so that's good. Manitou Makwa coming up and start us off. All right. Let's welcome them one more time. Come on, let's go.
Hey, get out of the way. Ani, I know it's the last day. We still have one more song to sing this afternoon, but my nephew here, Lucius, he's really into like round dance singing and he loves it. And what I want to do is I want to share a round dance song that we made a couple months ago, or I don't even know. Everything's blending together. But he really loves this song. A couple months ago in January or December, we went into the studio, and one of the things that I kind of was thinking about, because he kept singing a song with us, was I was like, you know what, man, like let's get you on the record and sing. So our next album that comes out will feature our little ones here, are my nieces and nephews. I got more family up north. My sister and her 2 kids live up north, so they're going to come down and record with us. But one of the things that we know as Indigenous people, as Anishinaabe and Ngwahome people, is that we need to transfer our knowledge to our children. And this is one of the ways that my family and my community, that's how we move forward, is we share our music with them, and we encourage them to sing and keep on singing, because that's what lifts them up. That's what builds them up and gives them that identity. And Louis is a character. He loves singing. They all do. But he's really drawn to this song and this style of music because his dad is also Cree. So he really connects with it. So I want to share this song, and I want them to share what their gifts are with everybody. Move up. Move up.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Manitou Makwa singers. You hear all that? You hear all that talking? They're talking about you guys. Just letting you know. They were awesome, eh? Let's hear it one more time. Come on, isn't that beautiful? My heart is so happy right now. Right there. One thing I love about our events here at Chisholm, Ontario is that our members feel compelled to get up and to acknowledge and get up to say words that truly mean something to them. So we have Jocelyn Wabano Aitail that felt compelled to get up and say a few words this morning before we have our morning speaker. Jocelyn is a beautiful member of the Mushkego Nation. And really, really happy to see her. Let's welcome Jocelyn, everybody.
Wachik, greetings. Kagashehaut in Dagos and the Shinhason, Masquana dotem, in a no eo scornina, at Dobaskatokigo Magashe CP Dostin, Mechanach Nina, Jocelyn Wabano Ayatilnish and the Shinhatagon. My spirit name is the one who behaves elderly. I'm from the Bear clan. I'm Inano through my mother from Atawapiskat, and I'm Eo through my father from Jasasibi. And I'm also a Turtle Islander citizen of Turtle Island. And I'm also known as Jocelyn Wabano Ayatil. Gishtin naskama gishimando mini begogi shagao is Jasabitaman. We jehint manoabitstayano magagishagak minamando. Maganish the Messer minamandog, kinanaskomitano. Ebi jishrenimiach negosis. Maganish the Nijashanak, Maganish the Nichawaganak. Maganish the Messer in the Hanago Tagaitajik. Ewichaka Bostagoyach, Megajota, Aski Epum Eitayach. I'd like to give thanks to the great Creator, Kishemanato, the Great Spirit, for the life that the Creator has given us today and all the many days that we've been on this earth walk, and for the support that we've gotten from our families, and for the gift of our children, and for the journey that we've come through. So I'm conscientious of time, because my cousin over there, I know he's right there paying attention to. Okay, so we're from the Wabano Ayatel family, and we tell the Wabano Ayatel story, and this is, we share the story of intergenerational child warfare genocide. These are the war conflicts of Indian Residential School, 60 Scoop, Indian Day School, Millennium Scoop, and the colonial institutions. And we often talk about the realities that what we went through in our family. We know it's not isolated to us. We're not unique. Many of us across Turtle Island know this story with lived experience. And I make it very clear that the state needs to be charged with genocide, a crime against humanity, war crimes, and a crime of aggression. There's been an attack on the authentic Sacred Nationhood Medicine Bundle in many, many different ways. And that bundle, one of the main factors of that bundle is original land, original language, original law, original spirituality, original governance, original ways of knowing, thinking, living, and being, and the original instructions that we were given by Geshemanito, the Great Spirit. And that ongoing attack on who we are as Inano, as Eo, as Mi'kmaq, and so on and so forth, all the nations of Turtle Island. We have a responsibility to rise up with everything that we have. For all the suffering that our families have gone through, we have a responsibility to stand up that we do not allow anyone to further abuse us again. Mana, right? So today we want to honor our children that have made it through so many atrocities. while so many loved ones have crossed over. My son is Wabano. Wabano is the first light of sunrise. What you see here is Wabano, the Wabano family. It means the first light of sunrise, but it also is the eastern direction, Wabanoch. And my grandmother, Maganik Wabano, and my mother, Mary Lou Wabano Ayatel, received the Indian Residential School apology directly from the Canadian States Prime Minister, Stephen Harper. And in that apology, there were many things that were mentioned, including that this would never happen again. And despite that apology that was given to my son's grandmother and great-grandmother, my son went through today's modern-day Indian residential school known as the Stampede Boys Ranch, that's located in Longview, Alberta, so-called Alberta. And he was wrongfully apprehended by the Children's Aid Society of Ottawa. And in that wrongful apprehension, Ngosis, my son, was assaulted in care. He was only 4 years old, and he was pushed from the second floor of the foster home, and he fell headfirst to the main floor. Imagine that, a 4-year-old from the second floor to the main floor. Come, touch the mic. Come. My son died on when he landed on the main floor. He fractured his skull and had a subdural hematoma. And his sister witnessed everything. She also witnessed the paramedics when they finally arrived. She overheard them that he wasn't going to make it. She saw that he was bleeding from his nose, his ears, his mouth. When he got to the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, Child Welfare refused to give medical consent to Dr. Ventura, the chief of neurosurgery, to have my son have his emergency brain surgery. And thank goodness for people like Dr. Ventura, for our family, he's a hero, because he said he had to try and save my son's life. He only had 20 minutes to live, because, as I said, he had died multiple times. And for people like Dr. Ventura, and we've heard of many heroes like Dr. Bryce. Many of you may have heard of Dr. Bryce. And this young man has lived with chronic pain. He also had injuries to his spine. And he's been on many medications throughout his life. Many of these medications, there's been lawsuits against these medications. And he developed an addiction to opioids as he was trying to deal with his chronic pain. My family and I had to fight to bring my son home. Bringing him home physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, culturally, linguistically, so on and so forth. Many of you know that journey from firsthand experience. Your heart and spirits travel in these very same moccasins. And he's been visiting Geshemanito, the Great Spirit, and he was told that, it's not your time. We're sending you back. And our granny, Maganiguabano, she too had a journey with the Geshemanito, the Great Spirit. Before she crossed over, she had that visit. And she told her Jaban, her great-grandchild, the Creator sent him back because he had work to do here. And I strongly believe in this. We want to honor this young man because he's opioid-free. And so I'm going to let our friend here speak about this creation that we're about to present him with.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Wesley Havel. I created this necklace. It's from the button of moose antler, and it's an eagle, and it's an eagle flying, and it has the sun and turquoise stones inlaid into it. To give it the color, I burnt the eagle to give it the brown. I always make them all naturally colored.
The skull,
Yeah,
the skull.
closest to this. Yeah, it's the piece closest to the skull. So,
Okay, Wabana.
ledge there. Okay. So, this is it. And presenting it to you. I'm glad you got it. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
Congrats, everyone, for presenting me this. Thank you.
Your uncle, give him a hug. Give it your uncle.
Everybody, let's stand up. And let's acknowledge this gesture and send some love over to this beautiful family. Kasagitan.
Miigwech.
Thank you, Lori. So we're off to a beautiful, beautiful start this morning, huh? Welcome to day number 3, everybody. Come on, give yourselves a round of applause. Come on, let's go. This is day 3 of the First Nations Community Wellness Conference with Chiefs of Ontario. Chiefs of Ontario has been an incredible advocacy partner for many, many years. And I, for one, am really proud of our Ontario Regional Chief and the wonderful staff that supports him and supports you in all of our work. Let's give Chiefs of Ontario another round of applause, everybody. Come on, let's go.
Morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the presentation this morning. I just told Stan, I said, you're doing such a great job. I said, you can be relieved now. Go sit down. I'll take over day 3 and bring us straight to the end. So I know he tries really hard to keep us on time in the great work that we're doing here, and so much going on over the last 2 days and as we move into the 3rd day. So I hope everybody's doing well this morning. It's such a great so great to see so many of you here this morning. I know that everybody has a hectic schedule. There's always lots going on. Has taken some of you some distance to get here. We had an Air Canada strike that has interrupted some of that. People have showed up, but it's so great to see so many, and I look forward to today. I did just want to come up here and offer greetings and good morning to all of you. Hope everybody's had a good time. I do want to acknowledge everybody's helping so hard, our presenters for the last 2 days and then the rest of today. But I also want to come up here on behalf of the Chiefs of Ontario, and I know their staff are working super hard on this conference, and some of you may have seen that there's some swag bag at the front registration that we have. And I'm up here to make a pitch to, if you didn't get one, please consider taking one. We have another bag inside of it that has a bunch of trinkets, and I know that some of this stuff may be of some use. Some of it may be good for your fall lawn sale. But we have lots of it, and we don't want to take it back to the office. And so definitely please stop by there at break or at the end of the day. Some of you may be leaving early, understandably. Your travels may require that. So That's all I wanted to do, was come up here and tell Stan that I needed a few minutes. I was only kidding about about taking over for the rest of the day, and I look forward to the rest of the presentations. And then I'll be doing some closing remarks later this afternoon. So all of you have a great morning, and Yamagoa.
Regional Chief, can my son have that bag? Can my son have that bag? You got 100 more? He's right over there. That's my boy I was telling you about this morning. All right, on. Thank you. All right. We have another full agenda, and we're going to get you out of here on the road at 3 o'clock. Oh, yeah. We have a guest here we wanted to acknowledge. We have Mike Schreiner, MPP from the Green Party, from Guelph, sitting right over here. Everybody, come on, let's welcome him. Mike, say hi. Right over there. There he is right there. Mike, if it's one thing that we know well here in our communities is that the environment is not a resource. The environment is our family. And we know you guys are fighting and advocating hard for our family. And we're thankful. It's not easy being green, Mike, as they say. There's a lot of work. Not too many of you. But we're thankful for your advocacy, so thank you. Okay. All right. You like that? Not easy being green? That's pretty good, eh? That's pretty good. Okay. Okay. It's worth it. It's worth it. I'm going to ask Chris Hoyos from Chiefs of Ontario to start making his way up. And we have a wonderful, wonderful keynotes back-to-back this morning before we get you on your way. Our first keynote is Investigative Journalism Bureau. Robert Cribb is the founder and director of the Investigative Journalism Bureau. He has received national and international reporting awards for investigations into offshore tax evasion, child exploitation, human trafficking, dangerous doctors, environmental threats, and public safety. He is a part of the international reporting team that produced the Pulitzer Prize-winning Panama Papers investigations in 2017. Cribb is the founder of the National Student Initiative Reporting Network, past president of the Canadian Association of Journalists, and first international board member of the Investigative Reporters and Editors, and co-author of Digging Deeper, a Canadian Reporter's Research Guide, Oxford Press. Everybody, before we get our friend Robert Cribb up here, Chris Hoyos has something to say. Let's welcome Chris, everybody, my dear friend. Chris.
Yeah, I'm just going to get started here. I wanted to just do a quick intro and some context setting for our next presentation. Rob is a great friend of the Chiefs of Ontario, and I've been working with the Investigative Journalism Bureau for quite a few years now. I'd say probably 6-7 years now. I wanted to just say a few words about that relationship and why it's a little bit different than your average sort of relationship with press, with journalists. So I'm the Director of Policy and Communications at the Chiefs of Ontario, and of course, you know, we get a ton of media requests, sometimes dozens a week, you know, if there's something big happening. And in my time prior at Chiefs of Ontario, I was working at AI, which I'm sure quite a lot of you know, and it was the same thing, you know, maybe not to the same extent, but we would get it, you know, constant requests from journalists, and what they were really looking for was a soundbite. Right, they want to come in, get their, you know, maybe couple sentences and get out of there. There wasn't really any follow-up, you know, maybe a little bit here and there. And, you know, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. We all, you know, need our daily news. But at the Investigative Journalism Bureau, they do things differently. They know that there are some stories that are too complex, too big, to simply just go in and out, have a quick conversation, and really capture what those concerns are. I was pretty surprised, to say the least, when Declan Keogh, he should be up here, he's at the back. Declan Keogh reached out to me about a water story. I was, like I said, working at AI, and they were interested in visiting Oneida. And, you know, initially I thought it was just sort of the same, you know, old kind of, okay, you know, you want to quote kind of a thing. But in fact, they wanted to spend a full year working on a project. They wanted to meet the chief and council. They wanted to meet individual community members. They wanted to talk to them. They wanted to take their time and listen to their stories and make sure they got the story right. So that's just to show the kind of work that they do. And Rob's going to go into a little bit more detail about some of the stories that we've worked on together over the years. But really, I'm a big supporter of the work that they do. Really, it's centered on trust, relationship building, and collaboration, which is, not something that we see very often from large media organizations. And over the years with the IJB and Rob and Declan, we've developed a new model essentially for advocacy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the keynote as well. But the idea is to make sure everything is lined up, right? You've got news stories coming out in the news cycle. It's, the talk of the day. It's on the front page. And that's when, you go to government and you say, hey, look, this is an issue. We have solutions. Let's have a conversation. So with that, I'd like to invite Rob up. He's going to go through a few slides with you guys. And Declan, actually, we stole him from IJB. He works for us now. But he's got a few words as well.
Testing, yes? Can you hear? Yeah? Okay, great. I'm Rob. Thanks for having, I'm a little emotional with that intro. That was very generous. It's a tremendous honor to be here. You don't know. I've been coming to regional and national events for probably about 6 years now. I've always been very warmly welcomed, and it's been an extraordinary, transformative thing for me to do, but I don't think I've ever been actually invited to come before, so I'm deeply honored to be here. So my job is to walk you through some stories that we've done together, picking up on what Chris said. We have built something which I believe to be very special. We've done the kind of impactful journalistic work that is rare because of our unique model. We're very privileged. We get to spend time. We do slow journalism. We dig in, we map out a long-term project, and we show up a lot. Declan and I, when we worked together, we would get in the car and drive to whatever meeting was happening, and we'd just spend time gradually building trust, getting it right, getting the data from governments, pushing governments to respond, and ultimately making sure that the people we talk to, especially the vulnerable people we talk to, are fairly represented and know well ahead of time what the story is going to say and make sure that it is consistent with their story. So if it's okay, I'll just walk through some examples of that just so you have a more tangible sense of what we're talking about. Very quickly, the IJB is a 5-year-old, it's a nonprofit. We're based at the University of Toronto. I'm a long-time Toronto Star reporter. I've left there now and I run the IJB. It's my passion, it's my dream. It's a remarkable miracle. It's a miracle that we're able to do this kind of in-depth journalism at a time when newsrooms across the country are being gutted. There is nothing quite like it. We have a remarkable team of about 10 people, many of them students who come in. We train them. They're the next generation of investigative reporters. Among them we've hired 2 Indigenous reporters. I see Owen Thompson's over here. He was our first Indigenous reporter who also left us for COO. Everybody who comes in and does stories on First Nations issues with us ultimately ends up at COO, I think. We're just a pipe. We're a stop on their way to COO. And so the really unique thing about our model, which is totally unlike anything at the CBC or the Globe and Mail or Global News, is we are not competitive. We throw open the doors. We bring in researchers, academics, communities, anyone who is interested in the issue. We build a tent, we welcome them in, and we tackle big systemic issues together, usually over months or in fact years. I'll show you one story that published recently that was a 2.5-year journey together. some of our stories. Okay, so we started doing this formally in 2019, which was essentially when the IJB started. I mentioned we've hired a couple of Indigenous reporters, but we've also worked very closely with others. Here's the first story that we did. This is the Oneida story that Chris just talked about. So Declan and I worked on this one together. And it started out as a broad look at water quality, drinking water quality. But ultimately, we ended up trying to tell that story through a powerful lens. And this is something we're always trying to do, to find the heartbeat, the faces and voices that will bring these big, massive public policy questions down to a level that will resonate with the typical reader out there, that will make them stop and go, this isn't just a story about a piece of legislation or about a protocol or a provincial rule. This is a story ultimately about people. And that's hard to do. And the reason journalists don't do that very much is because it's very, very time consuming. You don't get to do that by picking up the phone and making a couple of phone calls and filing by 5 o'clock. You can't do it. You got to get in cars, you got to go to meetings, you got to spend countless days trying to convince people that what you're trying to do is in the public interest and in their interest, and ultimately to hold governments to account for what's happening. So Jennifer George ultimately became the heartbeat of this story. But it was also backed up by volumes of data. We had stacks of data on this. We filed Freedom of Information requests. We got water tests from Oneida going back years, and we were able to show consistent pattern of unsafe drinking water in this community. And what made it powerful was there's a non-First Nations community right next to it. So there's a dirt road that separates Oneida. What's the name of that town? South? Yeah, it's a small town. And of course, we were able to show dramatically different levels of drinking water quality, state of the art on one side of the road, and complete antiquated technology on the Oneida side. And it had tremendous resonance. Is there a video? Do you have the video or no?
When it comes to my kids drinking the water, I'm afraid.
Their tap water was laced with bacteria, and for more than 15 years, their water treatment facility did not meet even the most basic provincial standards. But nobody was listening. So we spent months in the Oneida Nation of the Thames near London, Ontario, gathering evidence, fighting for documents from the federal government, and meeting with the people who live there. The story we eventually published sparked public outcry about a disparity in drinking water quality between the First Nation community and the non-Indigenous neighboring town where the tap water flowed from a state-of-the-art treatment system. In the aftermath of our reporting, the federal government committed $43 million to ensure clean water is on its way to the people of Oneida.
I'm afraid.
Here we go again. Yeah. Oops. Okay. Infrastructure. So we took a very deep dive last year. This is with Ryan McMahon, who we hired as our First Nations reporter through some grant funding that we got, and he led this reporting on the infrastructure gap. So $349 billion infrastructure gap, which we dug into. We got an advance copy of this study, and we spent 3 or 4 months gathering everything we could on it, and published a very extensive story. This is all on the front page, in this case the Toronto Star, biggest paper in the country. This is not getting buried. These aren't stories that show up on page 42 of the paper, and they're not short little stories. This was 3,000-4,000 word story. Huge impact, way more resonance, difficult to ignore if you're a reader of the paper. So it had remarkable impact, and the numbers speak for themselves. I don't need to tell you guys what these numbers show. And then another way we go about things in terms of scouring and trying to harvest all public information that we can, we dig deep into public records, including court records, which are very valuable. In this case, this was a report that was buried inside a lawsuit that popped out for us. It was a consultant's report, so these are engineers that visited 2 communities and wrote these completely independent clinical analyses of the infrastructure. And it was brutal. It was totally brutal. And it was a window inside this issue that was unique and ultimately led to another big story. This one kind of blew me away. I just didn't know. But when we looked at the data on fires, it just knocked my socks off. The level of injuries and deaths from fires on a per capita basis in Canada, First Nations versus non, is remarkable. And to me, it was a story that Canadians did not know. And so again, we spent a great deal of time looking at the data and then ultimately finding the voices in communities that spoke to. These are tragedies of a scale that I'm certain most Canadians have no concept of. And then I just want to get this one because this was a big one. So this is the project I mentioned earlier that took about 2.5 years. So again, Declan, before he left for COO, worked on this along with a team of people. Owen Thompson was working on this from its initiation. So we started this actually in my investigative journalism class at TMU University. We had students initially working on it, but it was so big in scope that ultimately it took 2 years to tell. So it's about NIHB and specifically mental health care. So the coverage available to First Nations people across Canada through the NIHB plan. And what we did was rather unique. So we got a list of every approved mental health care provider. So these are approved providers that the government says are approved to provide care. And then again, we dug into public records and effectively backgrounded them to figure out what their professional disciplinary records looked like, their social media, lawsuits. We dug into everything, and we matched the names to what we were finding independently through public records. And what we ultimately found was many of those providers have very spotty, in some cases deeply troubling records, including murder, sleeping with an ex-patient, abandoning a patient who became suicidal, etc. Nevertheless, continue to be licensed and approved to provide mental health care to First Nations people in the country. And then we also found some other really interesting things. We spoke with a number of First Nations therapists and counselors who could not get approved to provide services through the NIHB for a series of complex reasons that made no sense. So on the one hand, you had people who have clearly red flag backgrounds who are approved, and the thing that we kept hearing again and again from so many clients is, I need to talk to somebody who understands what I've been through. I need someone who has cultural sensitivity. And so we started looking at First Nations and Indigenous counselors and found that many of them said they've been essentially blocked from accessing the approval process. Video, can you play that?
I think it's time to let everything out. Because we need to.
I grew up in 38 foster homes and 2 residential schools and one day school. I was like a stone skipped across a pond.
They just don't believe you. right? They think you're lying. So if they shut the door and you don't come back, they're like, ha, I was right.
There's high rates of suicide everywhere on the reserves, and even with my own parents, that's how they died.
It's all the trauma from all the generations.
That's the complex trauma. That's what we're talking about, of how cultural genocide can really disrupt and interrupt that nervous system.
Nobody that understood my life and said, it's okay, I'll help you.
This is where I think Chris should probably jump in, but so we published that story, and it had sort of immediate public reaction from the government, including an acknowledgement. The federal government, which rarely does this, in the stories that we do, the response is typically, you know, here's what we're doing. Our number one priority is the health and well-being of First Nations people. But in this case, they actually did say, you know what, we're going to have to review this program. We're going to take a close look at it, and they acknowledged that there may be shortcomings in this program. And then I think that provided, do you want to jump in here? That provided sort of an opening, I think, for Chris and his team.
So as Rob mentioned, you know, they've been working on this story for quite some time, and, you know, working very closely with us. So we were very aware of their timelines. You know, we were facilitating some of the relationships that they were building, that kind of thing. And that really created an interesting opportunity. We were able to line up our internal advocacy processes with the dates that we knew this story was going to break. So when it did break, we were ready with a communications plan, we were ready with a government relations plan, so we could post on social media, we could secure meetings with the right government officials. So we met with Patty Hajdu, the Minister of ISK at the time, as well as the provincial counterparts, and we also met with the NDP and Conservatives, the shadow ministers. And we were able to secure strong commitments, very, very strong commitments from every single person we met with. And again, that's very rare. Typically, you know, we hear things like, oh, we'll take it back, oh, you know, we'll figure something out, what have you. But it's my belief anyway, and you know, I think this has been replicated a few times, and it's probably quite accurate. When, you know, something is in the news cycle, when it is front page, governments react in a much quicker and more efficient way. They're ready to listen to recommendations. They want to solve the problem much more than, you know, if there isn't that spotlight on the issue. So this was kind of like the beginnings of the model I was telling you. You know, a different way of doing advocacy and timing things in a way that is more practical.
Yeah, we should bring in Declan here, who's a hero of much of this reporting, and as I mentioned and Chris mentioned, has taken his skills with us and brought them to COO, and has effectively created kind of a separate investigative journalism unit within COO, which is like an incredible thing for you all to have this kind of resource. So, do you want to just talk about what you're doing?
Check. Hello. Hi, I'm Declan. Yeah, so like they mentioned, I now work at Chiefs of Ontario. I've been here for a year, and recently started as kind of a strategic advocacy thing where we're doing this kind of work, and then connecting folks with journalists, so what we can do now is either connect you with the right journalists or media outlets to suit your stories and needs, help you, work with you to craft your stories or collect data, brainstorm, file FOIs, and try and get the issue that you're concerned about to a stage where a journalist is going to never say no to you, basically. they're going to ask, they're going to beg you to work with you, because that's what we're trying to do here, is get the important stories on the front page and, you know, change things for the better. And we can also try and help with liaising with academics or other civil society groups, environmental groups, health groups, whatever it may be, that may also have a vested interest or have similar issues or concerns that your community or you or your families might have. And then, you know, ultimately we will try and craft public and government relations strategies to put pressure on those who need to be pressured to make things better for folks. And we're going to have a more informal workshop later this morning in one of the rooms where we're going to hopefully have some people who maybe want to shout out ideas, and we can all talk about how that might come to be, or what might need, you know, what sources of data you might be able to get, or how you could actually try and tackle those issues. And we can also kind of go into some of the stories that were just talked about today, like how does it happen, what needs to happen to be able to, you know, put someone's face on the front page and say they defend residential schools while offering mental health care to First Nations clients. Because that's, as you can imagine, that's pretty libelous. You could get sued for that. So to do that with confidence and to be able to you know, keep your chin up when you do that, you have to be 100% correct, or as close to that as possible, which is a high bar, but it's possible. And you know, I believe that anyone in this room could do that with the right tools and the right knowledge, and that's kind of what I'm here to try and help with now. So I guess we can, yeah, we got, if there's questions or anything like that, if anyone maybe has ideas they want to shout out or grab a mic, we're here for that as well.
Are we wrapping up? Yeah. Only that it's been, this journey for me has been the privilege of my career. Working with these guys and all of the people in the communities, it's changed me. There's no question about it. I'm different as a result of this, and it's one of the reasons I love my job. Getting access to you all, spending time, understanding and learning has been a remarkable adventure, and hopefully the work, not hopefully, the work has led to, I know, positive benefits, because we stay in touch with so many of the people that we've written about. So this is really just my pitch. If you have pressing issues in your communities and you believe that there is a need for them to be told widely, in order to summon the kind of public and political enlightenment and impact that is required, I hope you'll consider telling. I get that it's hard. I know that there's, Chris explains this to me, and I get it, I feel it. There's always reluctance to talk to journalists. I get it. I completely understand it, and if I were you, I wouldn't talk to me either, probably. But at the end of the day, what we've tried to do is build something different and work hard and long in order to build a level of trust to the point where if you do it, if you entrust us with the story, what I can promise you is this. We're going to take it very seriously, we're going to honor it, and we're going to make sure it's conducted ethically and morally, and ultimately tells the story that should be told. That's what I can promise.
And I guess just lastly, another reminder, we have a workshop. We'll go a little bit more detail about this, so please join us. Thanks.
All right. That is awesome. Hey, Rob.
Oh, you got a gift.
Hey, Rob. Hate to do it from down here, but there you go. There's a gift for you. Right here. We love you, brother. Thank you for all your work, man. No, sincerely, thank you. Let's get it for Rob, everybody, and the Chiefs of Ontario team. Go check out that workshop and chat with them. And as Rob was saying, this is something completely unique around the country. completely unprecedented, and it's happening here first in this region, which I think is really, really great. Again, let's give it up one more time. Come on, let's go. We have a second part of our morning keynotes. I'd like to have Marion, Tibor McMahon, and I'd like to have James McMahon to please make their way up. Marion is a social research and engagement specialist dedicated to social inclusion and supporting Indigenous communities to achieve their goals and aspirations. Marion has led many complex research projects in economic, housing, education, mining, and infrastructure sectors. Currently, Marion is leading a research and engagement related to the development of options for First Nations housing under urban, rural, and northern funding. We have James McMahon, a qualitative and quantitative researcher responsible for extracting, organizing, and analyzing social and economic data and assisting clients to understand data using data visualizations. That's a lot of data. Recently, James completed research and engagement for Chiefs of Ontario off-reserve housing and homelessness project. Currently, James is working on the development of options for Northern Ontario First Nations under urban, rural, and northern funding. Everybody, Marion and James. Good morning.
Great. Good morning, everyone. We're happy to be here to talk to you about this very interesting but very important project that we are doing for the Chiefs of Ontario on the research and development of options for Ontario First Nations specific urban, rural, northern, and Indigenous housing funding. I apologize, there's going to be a lot of project information, but we will be here after the break to facilitate a little workshop to dive deeper into the options, but we're just going to be here to provide you with some context and information. So we work for a 100% owned Indigenous consulting firm called Indigenous and Community Engagement. We specialize in socioeconomic research, community engagement consultation, reconciliation action plans, and Indigenous participation plans. We just had our bios, so I'm Marion, and this is James. So First Nation housing and wellness. You know, when we think about housing, it's more than just a shelter. It's a foundation of health, wellness, and cultural continuity. For First Nations communities, housing intersects with historical, social, and economic factors that have long impacted safe and secure living environments for communities and families. So access to affordable and secure housing support will meet the physical, social, and mental health needs to improve one's quality of life. First Nation communities have been facing issues like overcrowding, poor housing conditions, and with a large amount of populations in unhoused situations. Housing is a determinant of health. When people have stable housing, they experience better mental, physical health, stronger social connections, and reduced stress. Housing stability just doesn't happen in isolation. There are other supports that are interconnected, such as food security, wraparound services, stable income, cultural supports, and housing and homelessness prevention will facilitate stabilized housing for First Nation communities. So in our presentation today, we'll be going through this project that we've been supporting the Chiefs of Ontario on for over a year and a half now. And so this is about off-reserve housing and homelessness. So a little bit of a background here on this project, because it's been going on for over a year and a half. There's been a little bit of an evolution of it. So this started early in 2024, where we were retained by the Chiefs of Ontario to conduct research and prepare a feasibility study that outlines the opportunities, challenges, and considerations for First Nations to take greater role in addressing off-reserve homelessness. We conducted in-person engagement sessions with various First Nation communities and First Nations organizations. We then took all that engagement and put together recommended next steps, which were then transformed to possible options, which were introduced in Thunder Bay last fall at the annual Chiefs Assembly. Some of the funding has already been approved for a data sovereignty framework And that was approved in December, and actually yesterday James facilitated a workshop on that. And then now what we're doing is conducting additional research to decide how to allocate the remaining funding, which is the majority share of the urban-rural northern funding strategy. So from that feasibility study that we completed in 2024, it analyzed the feasibility of Ontario First Nations providing services to those who are unhoused and housing supports to its members off reserve. So some of the recommendations are to develop a First Nations data sovereignty project. One of them is also to create a First Nations-led off-reserve housing center for Ontario, direct financial support for new and existing off-reserve housing, and then housing technician training and support services, and emergency off-reserve rent supplements and support services. So following that feasibility study, Indigenous and Services Canada reached out to Chiefs of Ontario in response to the government's announcement to the urban, rural, and northern funding strategy, where there is going to be an Ontario First Nations specific allocation to this funding, and Ontario First Nations leadership will be able to decide how to allocate that funding over the next 7 years. And as a result of this, we conducted engagement sessions to provide options for chiefs to consider in determining the allocation of funds for this. And so really the purpose of these engagement sessions was to provide chiefs and housing technicians and staff an opportunity to learn what this funding is about, to share the findings from the off-reserve and Housing and Homelessness Research Project, and to facilitate discussions as to how the funds will be administered and the type of activities that will be supported to create new or off-reserve housing. So this is really a chance for First Nations to decide how that money should be used. It's not prescribed by the government. And so what we heard from these engagement sessions, we asked them, what types of housing projects would nations like to see developed? What type of housing services would you like developed to support housing? And how should the funding be managed? So we heard a lot about the lack of funding for off-reserve housing. Mostly it's the funding is to support on-reserve, so there's a lot of competition there for First Nations to access funding for off-reserve members. There is a need to support for working with municipalities, building those relationships with municipalities to access other types of housing support funding for off-reserve members, as well as emergency funding, which is needed for off-reserve members, such as rent supplements, to reduce the stress of monthly payments, and that would help support community members from losing their housing. And then, of course, sharing of off-reserve housing project knowledge and experiences. When it comes to financing and approvals, sharing that knowledge will help communities. And I'll turn it over to James for a few slides.
Good morning, everyone. So what I would like to go through over the next few slides are sort of some of the details of some of the options that have been developed. As Marion has mentioned, through a leadership council vote, there has been some funding that has been allocated to the data management framework. But as we'll see over the next few slides is some of the options and some of the sort of high-level summary of some of the strategies that are within each option. I should also remind you that if you have any questions or opinions about some of these options and things within them, we do have a workshop after this presentation, after the break, in this room that you'll be able to provide more feedback and listen more about what some of these options entail. So the First Nations Housing Data Management Framework was a very important part of this project, in part because both the understanding the need and the gaps of First Nations off-reserve housing and housing is related to accurate data and gaps in data that currently exist, but also in the proposal of any ideas that we actually are putting forward in some of the options to consider, that all of these options will need to rely on better data gathering and also better data management that in many ways serves the interests of First Nations. So at the core of it, that it is about building data collection policies that make data collection processes OCAP compliant. Also developing better data collection protocols and standards for when in agreement with governments or non-government organizations. Housing and homelessness is very complex and often requires quite a bit of partnerships and negotiations. So the idea is to make a data management framework that stands on the principles of OCAP and going forward uses data collection for the interests of First Nations. As Marion summarized, this is sort of, I guess, a visual summary of where we are today. What we have in the green is some of the funding has been already allocated to the data management framework, but everything in blue that I'm going to sort of go over is sort of more of a, these are things that are still being developed and considered for the distribution of the remaining funding. As you can see on the left, the visual idea that we have is that a First Nations-led housing center and the data management framework will sort of be the core of this delivery model, and that the options on the right are the ideas that we have of that are being proposed for how to help First Nations. So with the Off Reserve Housing Center, the idea here is to develop an organization that is governed by Ontario First Nations to manage funding and support off-reserve homelessness and housing projects and services. What this center is at its core meant to do is that is to direct fundings to First Nations. So this organization is going to be designed to leverage distinction-based funding for First Nations and then be able to deliver that funding and allocate it to First Nations. So avoiding issues of transparency and other issues that occur in other organizations that could be getting large pools of money and then are distributing it in ways that people might not know, or they don't know where, how the money is allocated. So with a distinction-based approach and a housing center that is First Nation-led, that it is to support the direct funding to First Nations. The other idea is to develop a long-term fund management plan, so how to use the earned funding that is available, but also to stack it with other funding to make sure that this off-reserve housing center isn't just a short-term project, that it's something that is able to leverage different types of funding, maybe even get into forms of investment, but to consider how this will be a long-term solution. One of the options is sort of an umbrella of housing technician training and support services. So we have been speaking with many organizations, Marion will get into that in a second, such as OFNTSC and AFLDC, and talking about ways to sort of leverage some of the First Nation organizations that are already doing hard work in technician training and support services. So this is to be able to try to expand some of these services off reserve, or to find solutions to providing these services off reserve to First Nations members, to developing training programs for councils and housing technicians for municipal planning, development processes, and building regulations, and also to provide training about off-reserve housing partnership opportunities with developers, community housing land trusts, and managing not-for-profit organizations in sort of the off-reserve space. Certainly at the core of this is the idea of providing housing to people in need. So here there would be a lot of options of how to allocate this funding to support new and existing off-reserve housing projects. So here, this would be the idea of whether to consider new builds, to promote projects that are shovel-ready, to consider renovations of existing residential buildings, the purchase of buildings, or to liaison with municipal governments to have certain partnerships, perhaps with rent geared to income. So there's many ways that this money can be allocated to housing, and certainly you know, what we want to do is make sure that we're considering all of them. The third one is also somewhat related to the last one, and this is about sort of people that are in cases where either due to an unexpected emergency or a crisis in affordability, that some of this funding would be able to go to off-reserve rent supplements and support services. So here's the idea of creating, for example, an emergency fund for rent supplements. Also to perhaps administer emergency funds to help with for those that are at risk of homelessness, or who need some of these funds to be able to perhaps return to community or you know, put food on the table. But all of these are interconnected, because if one is spending their money on to tackle food sovereignty, they might be struggling to pay their rent. So here, these emergencies are all interconnected, and this is what this option is considering. Marion.
Thank you. So we've been engaging with a lot of different groups and organizations to gain more insights and more feedback to help us develop those options for funding. And so these are just the main groups that we've talked to gain more information. And so just a few key takeaways from those discussions with those different groups is, first and foremost, is the need for First Nation-led off-reserve center to help administer that funding. This is a huge gap, and that's something that needs to be looked into. First Nation housing and homelessness off-reserve demand is growing, for sure. Operational funding is limited, and so it requires a lot of creative approaches to obtain additional funding to support First Nation members. Wraparound services are integrated in all organizations in order to meet the complex needs of First Nation families and individuals. Strong partnerships between First Nation housing providers and local municipalities are some opportunities there in order to get some housing projects developed. And then lastly, we've heard a lot about capacity building, so supporting First Nation members to navigate municipal bylaw regulations, helping them with financial literacy to help those projects. So right now, in terms of the First Nation off-reserve housing center, we are currently developing a business plan for that center. And in that business plan, we're gonna outline what those operational costs are for the center, but as well as estimating the money reserved for program funding. So that could include, you know, projects for building houses, for instance. And so really the funding could support new housing, retrofits, and suggested program options to address, you know, long-standing gaps in urban First Nation housing. And so the center's success will be measured through housing outcomes, community satisfaction, and impact on broader social determinants of health and well-being.
So the main takeaways for what we've presented is that we've sort of reached a point where that data sovereignty is sort of has been decided to be one of the foundations of where to go forward. But as we've been mentioning, the options that are still on the table are the ones that are sort of below. So the idea is that whatever we whatever we propose and whatever chiefs, whatever you decide, and then chiefs in assembly decide. The idea is that data sovereignty and a First Nations housing center sort of are used as a way to sort of deliver these options as best as possible. So there's still a few next steps. We've done some research to propose options. We've been doing a number of engagement sessions, including coming here today to be able to speak with you and share our work. But we also need to do a number of things such as reporting, which is finalize the business plan, and also to deliver a report on options. This will then be presented to chiefs at the fall assembly. And based on what is approved, there will need to be then decisions made of how then to use this funding to support off-reserve members and their housing needs. So our presentation today certainly has gone over a whole number of more of the details of the project. Some of them are just more, just the little details of a project like a business plan or the different phases. But really at the core of this is the idea that through the Chiefs of Ontario and the advocacy of Chiefs of Ontario, the idea is to use this earned funding to be able to use this earned funding for First Nations that allow First Nations to not only determine their own needs, but also to integrate their integrate some of their strategies to address historic and systemic barriers. So today in our presentation, it's been more of just, in some ways, more of a dry presentation about the project and what has been going on. But at the root of it, what we've been doing with the engagement is try to make sure that we are listening to all the ways that historic and systemic barriers have impacted the housing needs of First Nations, and how the solutions, being First Nation-led, will build better approaches to address those systemic barriers. The other thing is that this project is needed more than ever. So however, which way you look at it, Indigenous homelessness, and within that First Nations homelessness in Ontario is a crisis. And it is something that this earned funding, but also hopefully in the future more funding can be used to help address this, but also to support the self-determination of First Nations in delivering these housing and services to their people. As you see on the left, the trend of Indigenous homelessness in Ontario has been rising significantly. If you look on the right, the percent of people experiencing homelessness who identify as Indigenous is quite high all across Ontario, and in certain parts is extremely high. So this funding and this project is not only very important, and we are very honored to be working on it, but also it is something that hopefully we can build something that can then leverage it to continue to do good work in the future. Last, I'll just remind you, we do have a workshop after the break about this, because we would like to hear from you about some of the options, and you can learn more about that. And oh, that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you, miigwech.
Marion and James. Maloshin. Get your Maloshin. Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, take care. Thanks. All right. It's 10:15. We have our next workshop in an hour. Shall I tell my story for the next half an hour, or what? Do you want to hear my story for the next half an hour? Or do you want a nice long break? What do you think? You got to hold on before you get up and run away. I need people to promise me something. Number one, A few of you are going to go in the back over there and visit the sectors stuck on the hum. There's a hum right above them. And I was talking to Patrick yesterday from education, and that hum is haunting his dreams. He is like, he cannot sleep. All he hears is a all night long. So it's a big time sacrifice to be sitting over there. So a couple of conditions if I let you go for the 1 hour break. I need a few volunteers to go and visit our friends over there. Okay. And this actually gives you time as well because, yeah, you got to check out of your room, right? So who's leaving today? Who's leaving today? Okay, so there's a number of you leaving. And I imagine your room is a disaster, just like mine. So you got to go and check out. So go and check out, do your thing, take your time, do what you need to do, go pack up your cars. You have an hour. So the workshops are starting at 11:15. Holy, what a treat on the last day. So, break, you know what to do. Christmas is just around the corner. Go pick up a bunch of stuff. Go have some fun. Do some networking. Go visit your newest auntie. Go give some hugs. Tell some stories. Go and hang out. And we'll see you in your workshops at 11:15. Watch James Sway.